All right, welcome to Shorts Day 3 of the Innovation Summit. We are going to begin, since these are timed shorts presentations. So we are beginning with Bill, who is the director of the Leighty Foundation, and his presentation of why Juneau, embracing global climate change, danger as opportunity. All right, thank you, Bill. There will be time for question and answer all the way at the end after all three presentations have gone through. They are 10 minutes each. All right, take it away.
Thank you. Why are we here on the Lincoln Ani, home of the Akantaku Kwan, today? And should we be here? And what is our Kuleana here for innovation? That's a beautiful graphic was from Richard Carstensen. He's one of our wonderful historians. Of course, we're here because of gold mining and because of such low-grade gold ore that it took months, years, decades to process it and plenty of time to build a town. So we've got a city of Juneau here. The modern city, where every year we use about 30 million gallons of liquid fossil fuels, all imported, of course, in addition to the electricity from our hydro plants. And in 2019, I updated that earlier process that I did. Tourism was up. This is only the internal energy economy of Juneau. If you add the external economy, the barge fuel, Alaska Airlines fuel, the cruise ships, and the marine highway system fuel, look at this. Here's how much fuel we're responsible for, something over 150 million gallons a year of liquid fossil fuel. And most of that is powering the cruise ships that come up here. What's our obligation, given the climate change emergency, to do something about this? Now, necessity is the mother of invention. We all know that. It's also the mother of innovation. And here we are at an innovation summit. What's our opportunity, our obligation? Necessity is also the mother of invention and adaptation and stewardship and responsibility. So, what's our responsibility as individuals? Well, it's not only inconvenience, but emergencies and crisis and other horrible things that are the mothers of invention and adaptation. Consider World War II, the radar and the A bomb. Look at the migrations that are happening today because of these emergencies, these crises. COVID 19, we're fresh, we're in the middle of that one. And there are innovations, our behavior, and the miracle of vaccines. Now we have an even bigger problem, climate change. And a good way to measure all this is our discussion about Juneau cruise ship carrying capacity and what's Juneau's opportunity obligation for that. Climate change is a bigger danger than COVID 19, as horrible as that has been, because it involves all these effects, all of which are going to have major effects upon us unless we do something about the cause of this danger, which is the greenhouse gas emissions, mostly CO2 from burning fossil fuels. Kuleana is a Hawaiian word, more than a word. You know, the problem of translating languages, it's a concept, a way of life, a sense of obligation. It's your role, your profession. It's your obligation to community and to the earth and to parenting and grandparenting, taking only what you need. And finally, respect everything, everything. Some of you might know Nainoa Thompson, who was here in the summer of 2018 with the Polynesian Voyaging Society. He was also here in Hokulea in 1995 when it cruised all around the Pacific, including here in Juneau. He is well versed in the concept of Kuleana. It has to do with the antithesis of that, which is a tragedy of the commons, which is a failure of innovation. If you take too much, then you destroy it. And that has led us to the climate change emergency now, a tragedy of the economy because of failed and obsolete business models. Here's our innovation opportunity. Here's a failed model, innovation gone awry. This was simply too big. They've stopped production. They only built 46 of them. Airbus lost money. They cost 450 million a piece. Too big, failed business model. What about this one? Is this one too big at 2670 passengers? Launched 17 years ago, cost $500 million. How about this one? Is this one too big? Is this a failed business model? $1.5 billion, 5,000 passengers? And this is what happens when you make bad business decisions. These three ships you may remember seeing in Juneau. So, what are we going to do about this problem and innovation opportunity of all this cruise ship fuel to avoid this tragedy of the commons? Good news, innovation is bringing us already hydrogen fuel ships of various sizes. And the Maersk company, which is the biggest container ship line in the world, said we're going to have an emission free fleet. The only way to do that is by fueling these things with renewable source, CO2 emission free hydrogen or ammonia fuels. Here's one that's going to be on the way by 2023, a converted ship. If they can make them this big, can they make them this big? Look at this artist's conception, no smokestack, no stacks, it's all operated on green CO2 emission free energy sources. Could we produce that green hydrogen and ammonia right here in Southeast Alaska and bunker the ships for them? What bargain can we make with the cruise ship companies so that we can have CO2 emission free ships benefiting everyone and the earth, not just here in Juneau? This is our opportunity, our kuleana, our responsibility. We got our first electric bus running on rain, no emissions. We only need another 80 of these to take care of our summer visitors, and they cost about $800,000 a piece. Do the math, that's $64 million in capital expenditures to get rid of all those old dying diesel buses and replace them with something modern like this running on hydropower. How do we make that bargain with them? This is our kuleana. Those buses are necessary because of all the weird destinations that we have scattered all over the place for our folks. This is what the system diagram looks like, and that's why we need buses. They could be hydrogen powered, fuel cell buses, or battery electric, of course. Here's our innovation. How can we bargain for a hydroelectric powered shoreside infrastructure in addition to the ships to benefit everyone? Now, the smaller ships, this is just about the right size power plant at 250 kilowatts for a whale watching boat. So the whole spectrum could be done on renewable source energy produced right here. So this was from a 2019 presentation when we were asking ourselves, do we really want to accommodate 1.5 million cruise ship visitors here in town? What's our carrying capacity? And doesn't that have something to do with our kuleana for managing, for respecting everything? All these aspects that have to do with that question, we really haven't dealt with them quite yet. So back to our question, why are we here? Should we be here? And what is our kuleana for the innovation by which we might stay here, following in the footsteps of the first people who came so long ago and deal with this enormous problem of the amount of carbon fuel, fossil fuel burned by the cruise ships. If you put it all together, the internal energy plus the even larger external energy responsible for Juneau, our total energy, we're probably the least sustainable community in the continent, or at least in the country. What are we going to do about that? Are we going to innovate, or should we just say Juneau doesn't belong here? Time to believe, time to go. So, what's our bargain? What can we bargain for? It needs to be a multi win innovation challenge. We want innovation, not litigation. And this is going to be for all visitors, residents, all industries, all modes of transportation. This is the level of bargaining and innovating that we need to do. The, the cruise ships and CapEx to support them to convert everything in shoreside to CO2 emission free hydrogen fueled or electric fueled would be 143 million. That's a huge amount of money. But we've been talking the last couple of days about some very innovative ways of doing that. So this is our list of opportunities to respond to this emergency. What are we going to do? We could produce green hydrogen and ammonia to bunker these big ships. We could do innovative finance. But meantime, do we want to close down the port of Juneau to any fossil fuel ships of larger than so many passengers? Do we want to close down the CBJ owned docks to fossil fuel ships? Well, we have to pay $2 million a year in bond payments for those docks. We better have some revenue in mind to do that if we had that in mind. These are extremely draconian measures to even contemplate, but we have an emergency in climate change. Are we going to limit the size of the cruise ships that come, as Key West has tried to do? And the Assembly put together a task force for that a couple of years ago. The cruise ship industry had been very successful until the 2019, of course, the disaster that happened then. $12 billion worth of capex in cruise ships would have come to Juneau in 2020. Expect that about in 2022. Am I done?
Yep, that's your 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Been a
Again, there'll
pleasure.
be time for question and answers right at the end. And then after, in our last networking hub, the UAS networking spatial chat floor is going to be dedicated to the presenters for you to ask your questions. But if you have some that you want to discuss at the end of this shorts round, put them in the chat below and we'll address them at the end.
Shall I stop share?
Stop sharing. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Bill. Up next, we have Kai Holland, a partner at Alyeska Venture Management, and his Agile Economic Development and Innovation Fueled Future presentation. Welcome, Kai.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for joining this session. And I'd also like to introduce Sarah Katari, who's joining me with this session. And I'll let Sarah introduce herself and kick it off for us.
Hey, thanks, Kai. Welcome, everyone. Really excited to be here and to talk about Agile economic development alongside Kai. I want to start this short off with a common story that we all know as Alaskans, which is growing up here, kids go to school, and they figure out eventually that Alaska is a bit short-stopped when it comes to innovation and opportunity. And so the common story is we all end up moving out of state to go to college, or we stay in state to conserve our funds without really wanting to invest in a further innovative opportunity. And so this is sourced from a cycle that we can see on the next slide, Kai, which is the cycle of economic evolution. It's an S-curve cycle where we grow, we plateau, and then eventually it degrades. Within this is the common thinking of here and now, which we see in a lot of leadership today. And so before I hand off to Kai to talk more about this S-curve model and agile economic development, I want to leave you all with a question, which is how do we get our community involved in this conversation of innovation to encourage our leaders to take action?
Great, so what does this S-curve look like in Alaska? I'd like you to consider that Alaska has had two major S-curves or economic cycles in the past. We, of course, have the original economic model in Alaska of a subsistence culture that was successful, sustainable, and even to this day is still a part of our communities. From that, with the arrival of the Russians came the extraction economic model, and we continue to benefit from that, and we continue to struggle with it today as we see that that model has essentially become a mature model. We may have one mine open, one mine close, one fishery be successful, another one crash. And I would submit that it's time for us to think that it's a necessary step for us to think about the next economic cycle for our state to be able to add value and to move beyond the stalled, mature economic cycle of extraction. Which leads us to the question of, well, what is next for Alaska? And this is such an important question that we've begun looking at, which asks us to look at the question of where are we going and how will we get there? Without knowing where we're going, some of the problems we're struggling with today are hard to solve because we don't know where we're going in order to know what the answers might be. And within that, we have to consider that there's some basic economics that we have to begin to struggle with. And there's three primary flows that begin to frame that next Alaska that we might look at. One are the flows of money into our economy. Those are generally through exports. Another are the flows of money that leave our economy, usually because we have to import things into the state. And the third are the flows of money within the state. And our next economic model will hopefully increase the export flow of money from value added into the state. Maybe it will increase the import substitutions and reducing some of the outflow of money. And hopefully it also increases the velocity and vitality of the money flowing within the state. That issue of economics now moves us into some questions about what are we doing to create a strong system of innovation economics. What do I mean by innovation economics? These are the questions and the policies that relate to how we create a fertile area for innovation ideas to be developed, explored, just like what Bill was talking about a few moments ago. He outlined a whole bunch of really fascinating economic opportunities and innovation for us. Are we creating the ability for entrepreneurs to take the risks to start those ventures? Are we providing our young people the skills to have the appropriate knowledge and capability to support the new kinds of businesses that come from that? And ultimately, are we creating policies that support the advancing IT and broader digital transformations that really would create an amazing opportunity for Alaska and its location in the world? Well, I think one of the strategies that we need to embrace is the idea of agile economic development. Agile economic development is a powerful way of beginning to take on these complex, wicked problems that really are not going to get solved with traditional strategic planning and kind of this hierarchical approach where somebody from on high initiates a planning process and it ends up with a book, and we think that somehow that book is going to be a plan that will turn into some sort of results. Problems like our fiscal plan have been not solved with that traditional approach. The coming problems of our economic model for our state, climate change, energy transitions, carbon reduction, these are wicked hard problems, and they're going to require an agile approach to how we engage them and how we begin to bring people together to work on next steps. And instead of doing long planning processes that then we find out are wrong, creating an agile step-by-step improvement process that allows us to develop ideas and learn from them. How does economic development work? Well, it begins by creating a foundation for this work that looks at the brain power that's being developed, it looks at the innovation and entrepreneurship networks, it looks at the connected places, and it builds the narratives about the future work that we're trying to do. Fundamentally, agile economic development is about not wishing for what we had, but instead sitting down and linking the leverages, linking and leveraging the assets that we have. And in doing so, building trust and experience and the ability to do more and more complex projects in the future by starting together to advocate and then learning and then being able to do innovation. Fundamentally, this innovation future will be one built out of an open innovation strategy. That is that rather than having the startup communities and innovators sitting off to the side doing what they do and the traditional economy sitting over doing what they do, that we'll see this come together. We'll see this rich area in the middle where folks are working together with entrepreneurs, existing businesses, education, and the public systems to be able to solve these wicked complex problems. Fundamentally, the process, the discipline of this agile economic development is really pretty simple. It's a cycle that goes around and around and around, creating this clarity on what could we do, what should we do, and then linking and leveraging those assets around what will we do, with a commitment to then these 30-30 processes of coming there and saying, what did we learn from what we just did? What are we going to do next? And then doing this again and again and creating successes and wins that build upon each other. This ultimately is framed by creating a platform where we can bring together existing organizations to share information and link and leverage those assets. We're not taking away from all those organizations and what they do, but we're creating a platform so that they can work together. And back to you, Sarah.
Absolutely. And so when we think about this agile economic development model and the strategic doing cycle, we really come back to the basics, which is, of course, our young innovators who are creating this idea that there's nothing going on in Alaska because of what they see around them. But the reality is that there is stuff happening in Alaska. There is innovation here. And whether or not it's federally funded, it's going to stay here. And so when we look at all of the assets that we have to leverage and bring into this fast-paced, agile economic development structure, we can see that there is a lot of opportunity here. And the real bottleneck is that funding. So the question that's left is, why is it so hard to fund innovation? And that's pretty much it. If you want to talk further about this, of course, the Q&A will be happening. You can find out more at akv3.com, strategicdoing.net, and I will drop those links, or Kai will, in the chat afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you so much, Kai and Sarah. Everyone write down the email or the website to learn more. So up next, we got Clay Good, who is a regional energy catalyst for the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. And his presentation, Energy Independence Meets Beneficial Electrification in Southeast. So take it away.
Unmuted here and get myself on the proper slide. So hello and thank you for joining me here at this tail end of this Innovation Summit. My name is Clay Good, and I'm the Regional Energy Catalyst for the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. It's hosted by my employers, the Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP. Kalinkadani has been my home since 1967, when I arrived as a child in Juneau at Auk Bay, just down the beach from the former Auk Village here. I graduated from Juneau Douglas High School, called Yada At Kare, in 1978 and taught high school science there for 25 years. This place has shaped who I am and how I live, and that's especially why I appreciate and honor those who have known this place for countless generations. This innovation short is dedicated to the first people of Southeast for their knowledge, vision, and resilience. The Renewable Energy Alaska Project is a homegrown 17-year-old statewide nonprofit led by its founder and CEO, Chris Rose. REAP is committed to helping guide the direction of energy policy and practice in Alaska as we transition from a fossil fuel-driven energy economy to renewable energy over the next critical years.
Clay, I think you went on mute.
Oh.
There you go.
How long have I been on mute?
Just a few seconds.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I meant to, sorry.
Thanks.
Thanks for that. You may have heard my colleagues Ralph Wolf on Wednesday and Bob Christensen yesterday describe the who, what, and how the SSP is. What is most unique is the how. How businesses and nonprofits, tribal and village organizations, communities, and individuals are determined to work together, to wuch-een, as the Tlingits say, to create a better, more prosperous and sustainable Southeast. SSP catalysts work across the region and across sectors to support enterprises that are regenerative and whose successes add up to more than just the bottom line. A decade already behind us, the Sustainable Southeast Partnership is a growing and dynamic organization, blazing new trails and forging new partnerships toward a more ecologically, economically, and sustainable Southeast. I'd like to riff a little bit off this year's theme to include regional perspective. It's not a stretch to say that all the communities of Southeast are intimately connected, many for thousands of years. To this day, these deep regional connections act as a super community with a culture and history of trading and sharing wealth and acting as an integrated, holistic regional economy. These interconnections are the foundation of Southeast's culture, its prosperity, and its resilience. Energy is central to any society and economy, and consider how energy is generated in each community. and consider how the burden of the various costs to provide that energy is shared. In this innovation short, I'll highlight some of the ways in which Southeast is displacing hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil each year with local renewable energy resources, and how energy independence is a great example of localization in a global economy. Energy independence, simply stated, means any community that is in control of its energy supply has better control of its economy and quality of life. The fossil fuels we import to heat our spaces and drive our engines is traded as a global commodity, and most of the money spent to import it immediately leaves the community. Renewable energy that is created locally strengthens the local economy while also creating greater community resilience and security in the face of challenges. Whether it's the collapse of the Alaska Marine Highway System or a global pandemic, hard times come, and the resources to manage them are not always easy to come by. So energy independence is fundamentally about energy security. A community with access to local energy is a more resilient community. I'd like to take a moment to describe the pictures on this slide. This slide shows how the community of Cake has begun to displace half of their diesel generation with their new Gunnock Creek Hydro and its associated salmon hatchery, which will, of course, support and bolster their local salmon industry. We also see Heidelberg's new advanced wood energy boiler that's used to heat their school and their greenhouses. There's about a dozen of these boilers and greenhouses in associated communities of Southeast Alaska. But for communities scale power, it's not as easy as throwing up some solar panels. The clean energy transition is complex and complicated and requires strong partnerships and planning and persistence to succeed. SSP and its many partners like Southeast Conference and utilities provide support and resources to make sure community energy stakeholders are informed and at the table driving energy discussions and decisions. I just want to take a moment here to kind of describe the sort of food energy nexus that we see in this energy system. Energy security is important for the same reason that food security is important, which is also why Jennifer New is the SSP's amazing food security catalyst. She presented in another room just a few moments ago. Here's some snapshots showing how the work of the SSP is integrated across sectors. Communities achieve greater energy independence by heating their public buildings using locally sourced regenerative biomass wood, creating jobs for the supply. Those communities have access to hundreds of miles of logging roads and thousands of acres of post-logging regrowth. Waste wood from harvest thinning and sawmills provide abundant fuel. Excess heat from the boilers is channeled to the greenhouses to extend the growing season. Students and community learn food production skills and create a local economy selling local produce, and the economy is thereby localized while also strengthening energy and food security. You may have heard the phrase beneficial electrification used lately. Simply, it means using local, clean electricity instead of fossil fuels where possible and economical. Heat and transportation are by far the biggest slices of each community's energy profile, and both are traditionally supplied by fossil fuels. Recent technological advances in electric vehicles, batteries, and air source heat pumps for home heating have tipped the scale and are now becoming more and more economically competitive and particularly well suited for Southeast climate, lifestyle, and hydroelectric resources. As we charge ahead into the exciting new clean energy economy, we have the opportunity and responsibility to apply our new resources with a view toward greater equity. This is important because Alaska's rural communities pay a much larger share of their individual and community income for energy than do their urban counterparts, and this limits the prosperity and resilience of those communities. As a timely example of equity in action, instead of installing more electric vehicle chargers for those who can afford an electric vehicle, Juneau energy leaders wisely dedicated considerable resources to provide clean and reliable new electric buses for those who rely on public transportation. This is first bus out of 7 on order, with an entire fleet of 18 to be replaced over time. Fortunately, Southeast possesses an enviable concentration of renewable energy resources. You name it, we got it. And the energy is abundant and free, but the cost of production and delivery is higher here than most places. Customers and demand may come and go, but operation and maintenance costs don't. One solution to the cost of energy is for the utility to sell as much of its available power as possible to help drive rates down. And for many Southeast communities, switching to electric vehicles and air source heat pumps for their homes is a great way to save money as a consumer and help reduce the cost of electricity for the entire community. With that, I say thank you for attending, and contact any of our SSP catalysts if you would like to work together with the Sustainable Southeast Partnership. Ganeshish.
Thank you so much, Clay. All right, that ends our 3 shorts presentations. I don't see any questions in the chat box yet. So if anyone in the audience has a spark of a question, feel free to enter it right now. All right. Again, there will be more time to get to know the presenters after the end of the summit today, after the event, in the UAS Networking Hub. But if you have a question in your head right now, I bet other people in the audience do have that question too. So put it in the chat that is at the bottom of your screen, next to, like in the black row at the bottom of the screen. All right, here's a question. Who do you propose will produce this green fuel? And that's for Bill. Oh, Bill, you're muted.
How's that?
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Who will produce this clean fuel, right?
Yes.
Is that the question? Okay. Private enterprise. And therefore, there must be an incentive to do that. There must be a market. There must be profit. There must be cash flow. And there must be a resource to harvest. So we start with the market first, don't we? And it's an iterative process. We have no one yet calling up asking for a shipload of hydrogen fuel. But if they knew that we would like to be in that business, then we might get the circle moving whereby we could find a customer, do the spreadsheet, and find out whether there's profit to be made and capital to be raised. Capital will only flow to opportunities to invest with attractive reward to risk ratios.
If I can follow up on that, and Bill, I'm curious, from my standpoint of creating an innovation ecosystem, this question really is driving at the opportunity for us to bring visibility to these opportunities, to create challenges and incentives for people to work on this problem. I think until we elevate some of these challenges and opportunities, we won't really engage people and engage private enterprise in these opportunities.
Alaska Power and Telephone has been a leader in Southeast Alaska and wondering what to do with a lot of stranded hydro resources that they have. And Bob Grimm and I have talked for 15 years, he's retired now, about the prospects of ammonia. For example, in Juneau for the Snettisham hydro plant, we don't know how much hydro energy is spilled every year because we simply don't have a place to park it. We can't run it through the hydro plant, so it just goes over the wall, over the spillway. If we could have run the Snettisham hydro plant at full 70 megawatts or whatever its nameplate is, 8,760 hours a year, we could have produced a lot of CO2 emission-free energy, converted it to anhydrous ammonia, and stored it in a big tank down there at Snettisham to recover or to sell to the cruise ships when they come through. And one ammonia fertilizer tank, as they use them in the Corn Belt, Great Plains, stores 200,000 megawatt hours of energy as the chemical energy in ammonia molecules. And that's about 8 cents a kilowatt hour capex, and batteries will probably not be below $200 a kilowatt hour capex. Sorry, long answer.
I liked it. I like the answer too because it gives an idea of what to do with this available energy. We can use it for heat pumps and EVs, but you know, if we have the excess energy, it's best to put it to use.
But it takes capital equipment to harvest it, to convert it, store it, and then recover it.
The storage issue, I think, is a fascinating one. Kind of back, Clay, to your comment about what do we do with this. This ammonia conversion is a wonderful way to think about the problem we've talked about of how do we store excess alternative energy. And this is one of the tools that we have available is green ammonia as a way to convert extra sunlight or extra wind power or extra hydrogen power into ammonia, and you can stick it in the tank and you can wait to burn it when you don't have the alternative energy available in the quantity you need it.
You may know that the Maersk container ship company has claimed that they're going to have a CO2 emission-free fleet by 2050, and ammonia will probably be the fuel they choose. They have such a small crew that if there is a leak, which is a dangerous material, they can just send the guys to stand outside for a few hours until somebody goes to fix the leak. Can't do that on a cruise ship.
Alina, would you like me to address Bob's question?
Yes, go ahead. We only have about 1 minute left before we head back to the main stage. So take a brief and then meet up in the networking hub afterwards.
Great. Appreciate the question, Bob. I like the question about equity. You know, here we are in Juneau and we enjoy so much because it costs so little here. And that's why I brought up the issue of equality versus equity. You know, equality is fine, giving everybody the same amount, but there are communities with much greater needs than we have here. And so as we look at the this new green revolution and energy money is becoming available, I think keeping an eye toward equity and putting our resources where the need is great also is incumbent upon us to do that. And so we might have to put more money into our smaller communities so they can enjoy a better lifestyle, enjoy some of the benefits that we enjoy in the urban centers. And that, of course, that just then tends to snowball their economy. The more affordable energy is, the more they have available, the more they can do with it. And that just generates more resilience and sustainability for communities. So thanks for that question, Bob.
All right, thank you so much to all four of our presenters today. We are going to be heading back to the main stage now. That is jedcinnovationsummit.org, and we will have a little bit more time. Thank you so much.